For those of you who haven't met me before, I'm Sebastian Wood, I'm the ambassador here, and I want to welcome you all to the embassy this evening. Thank you very much for coming to this information evening. I gather that Berlin has now overtaken North Rhine-Westphalia as the state with the largest population of UK nationals. And which is good news, and I'm pleased that so many of you were able to come this evening. We are actually going to film, we'll have a short succession of speeches. Mine is the first of 4 which will be filmed, and then we're going to switch the cameras off after that so that we can have a more private discussion between us. And the filmed speeches will go up on our website for a wider audience, because I know that quite a lot of people wanted to attend this evening, but we ran out of spaces. So, I want to say that I'm particularly pleased that we're joined tonight by Christoph Wolfrum. Christoph is here in the front row, who's the head of the Europe department in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and will be able to give us some insight into the German government's planning on citizens' rights. A very warm welcome also to Jane Golding, who I'm sure all of you know. Chair of British in Europe. We've done similar events together in the past, and I think it's valuable for all of us to have Jane's participation. I'm very pleased also to welcome Engelhard Mazanke, head of the Berlin Foreigners Office, who will talk about the implementation of the Citizens' Rights Agreement in the city of Berlin. A warm welcome also to Professor Dannemann from the Center for British Studies at Humboldt University, who will moderate the question and answer session that we have today after the speeches. And also on the podium with us in that session will be Priska Merz, our regional consular policy advisor, the resident expert in this building on citizens' rights issues, who will be a member of the panel. I know that the EU referendum decision caused considerable uncertainty and worry for many of you. And these are difficult times, but the UK government remains determined to build an ambitious, deep and special future partnership with the EU, even as we leave the Union. From the very beginning of the process, the Prime Minister has been clear that safeguarding the rights of EU citizens living in the UK and UK citizens living in the EU was her first priority for the negotiations, and it was the first topic that was discussed between the two sides. And the agreement that was reached on the 25th of November marks the culmination of a long and challenging negotiation between the UK and the EU. If it is ratified, the withdrawal agreement will protect the rights of more than 3 million EU citizens living in the UK and around 1 million UK nationals living in the EU. It will ensure that EU citizens in the UK and UK nationals in the EU can continue contributing to their communities and live their lives broadly as now. The draft withdrawal agreement and the associated political declaration on the future UK-EU relationship have given rise to a stormy debate in the UK Parliament, of which you will all be aware. And that in turn has given rise to a lot of speculation that the deal will not be ratified by Parliament. It remains, however, the firm intention of the government, the British government, to achieve ratification of the withdrawal agreement. So I want to start my remarks today by talking a bit in more detail about the agreement that has been reached. And then after that, I will speak about the potential situation should Parliament not ratify the overall agreement with the EU and should we face a no-deal scenario, although the British government is of the firm view that failing to ratify the deal would be neither in the UK's interests nor in the EU's interests. So, let's start with the agreement on citizens' rights, which is included in the withdrawal agreement. So in November, the British government and the European Commission published an agreed text for the withdrawal agreement. And the two sides agreed an implementation period which will run from the 30th of March 2019 until the 31st of December 2020. And during that implementation period, you will be able to continue to travel, work, and live freely in any member state. All UK nationals legally resident in the EU before the end of the implementation period will fall under the citizens' rights part of the withdrawal agreement. All of those people would be in scope. And the withdrawal agreement will protect the rights of UK nationals in their member state of residence in the following ways. UK nationals that have been in Germany for 5 continuous years by the 31st of December 2020 will be granted permanent residence. Those who have not yet completed 5 years here by December 2020 will have the right to continue to stay and acquire the status of permanent residence by completing a full 5 years here. UK nationals who have been granted permanent residence under the withdrawal agreement would be permitted to be absent from their host state for up to 5 years without forfeiting that status. This means that you would be able to continue to live and work in Germany as you do now. Family members of any UK national within the scope of the withdrawal agreement would be allowed to join the person on the same basis as provided for in current EU rules. So if you're resident in Germany, you would be able to bring your family members to Germany even after the UK's exit from the EU. This would apply to children, grandchildren, including those born after exit day, partners, dependent parents, and dependent grandparents. Partners in this context can be spouses or registered partners, but the relationship must have started before the 31st of December 2020 and still be continuing. Family reunification of other categories of relatives, aunts, nephews, and so forth, would be governed by national law after the end of the implementation period. The withdrawal agreement also includes an agreement on social security. We will continue to aggregate social security contributions made both before and after the end of the implementation period. Therefore, those who have paid into a system and may pay in the future will have their contributions protected. So if you've contributed to the public pension schemes in Germany and the UK, you will continue to receive both pensions according to the same application process as you do now. In addition, we would continue to pay an uprated UK state pension to individuals resident in EU member states and covered by the withdrawal agreement. We would also protect the right to export relevant benefits to both EU member states and the UK as under the current EU rules. We also agreed in the withdrawal agreement to continue current healthcare arrangements for those UK nationals who are resident in Germany by the 31st of December 2020. This applies to all types of reciprocal healthcare, including the European Health Insurance Card, the EHIC card, planned treatments and healthcare reimbursements via the S1 route, for example, for pensioners. The withdrawal agreement also covers frontier workers. These are people who live in one EU country but work in another one. Their rights will be protected if they were working across borders on the 31st of December 2020 for as long as they retain the status of frontier worker. Under the agreement, you would also keep your right to run or establish a business in Germany and your right to equal treatment with citizens of the host state, in this case, Germany. I understand that particularly to those of you who are self-employed, the continued mutual recognition of qualifications is very important. This has been confirmed for cases where recognition decisions have been received or where recognition procedures are ongoing on the 31st of December 2020. So this applies to the European Professional Card, qualifications recognised under the Professional Qualifications Directive for the purpose of establishment, lawyers practising under host state title, approved statutory auditors and persons engaged in the trade and distribution of toxic products. You would keep all the rights I have mentioned, including the right to change status, e.g. from student to self-employed or from worker to pensioner, for the duration of your lives. In addition, as part of the political declaration accompanying the withdrawal agreement, the UK and EU have committed to visa-free travel arrangements for short-term visits. There are a number of issues which the EU Commission deemed to be outside the scope of the first phase of the negotiations and are therefore not included in the withdrawal agreement, including the right to continue to live and work in all EU 27 countries after the end of the implementation period, also known as onward movement rights. The UK government was disappointed not to secure this right in the withdrawal agreement and will seek to secure onward movement for UK nationals living in the EU as part of the future relationship with the EU. In summary, the withdrawal agreement allows EU citizens in the UK and UK nationals in the EU to continue living their lives broadly as they do now in the countries where they now live. Now, I know that many of you will be worried that the UK Parliament may not ratify the agreement reached. The first point to make is that the UK government does not want or expect a no-deal scenario. The withdrawal agreement and political declaration were endorsed by the leaders of all 27 EU member states, or I should say all 28 EU member states, at the European Council on the 25th of November, and the Prime Minister remains determined to secure its ratification. But the Prime Minister has also addressed the question of what would happen to the rights of EU citizens in the UK in the event that the UK left without a deal. She's confirmed that the rights of all EU citizens resident in the UK before the 29th of March 2019 would be protected. In her words, "You are our friends, our neighbours, our colleagues. We want you to stay." The UK government has set out more detail in a policy paper on citizens' rights in a no-deal scenario. The government has chosen an approach based on the withdrawal agreement. EU citizens and their family members resident in the UK by the 29th of March 2019 would be able to stay and carry on with their lives broadly as now. They would continue to be able to work, study, and access benefits and services in the UK on the same basis after we exit the EU as they do now. The UK government would still implement the EU settlement scheme under which EU citizens would be able to apply for settled status in the UK. They would have the right to leave the country for up to 5 years without losing their permanent residence. EU citizens and their family members lawfully residing in the UK by the 29th of March 2019 would be able to continue to access in-country benefits and services on broadly the same terms as now. This means that they would retain their entitlement to healthcare, education, benefits and social housing on the same basis as now. EU citizens would also continue to have their professional qualifications recognised in the UK after exit, where they have applied for or received a recognition decision by the 29th of March 2019, and the rights of frontier workers would be protected. After publishing this policy, the UK government called on the EU and member states to uphold their commitments to citizens and to offer similar protection of the rights of UK nationals in the event of a no-deal scenario. We hoped that member states would set out details of how they would do so as soon as possible. And I'm very pleased that Christoph Wolfrum from the Auswärtiges Amt is here today to share some of the German government's thinking. Where it is in our control, the UK would also continue to preserve certain rights of UK nationals in the EU, For example, by continuing to pay an uprated UK state pension to eligible UK nationals living in the EU. And UK nationals who return to the UK permanently in a no-deal scenario would have access to NHS-funded healthcare on the same basis as UK nationals already living there. They would also be able to register to vote in local and national elections. We understand that the right to bring EU and non-EU citizen family members would also be an important concern for some UK citizens going back to the UK, and the government is considering the support that could be offered and will set out further details on that in due course. Aspects of the reciprocal healthcare and social security coordination section of the withdrawal agreement would require reciprocity from the EU or individual member states and therefore cannot be protected by the EU acting alone. We're exploring options to protect past social security contributions made in the EU and the UK and reciprocal healthcare arrangements in the unlikely event of a no-deal scenario. So I hope, ladies and gentlemen, that demonstrates the UK government's commitment to the issue of citizens' rights. But as I said, the UK acting alone cannot protect the rights of UK nationals in the EU in a no-deal scenario. And that is why we've asked member states to respond to the guarantees that we have given in the UK to EU citizens and to offer similar guarantees of the rights of UK nationals in their member state of residence, even in a no-deal scenario. I remain hopeful that the UK will agree a positive and ambitious deal with the EU, an outcome that is in the interests of both sides, and we will continue to engage with the German authorities on the implementation of the citizens' rights deal. I appreciate that this is a period of great uncertainty for many of you and that you will want more information and advice. We want to help you prepare for all scenarios, and we are committed to ensuring that relevant information is available in a timely and transparent and accessible way. Further information will continue to be made available on gov.uk in the coming weeks. It's very important that the German authorities know that you are in the country and covered by the withdrawal agreement, so please make sure you register with the German authorities if you haven't done so yet. In the meantime, please ensure you stay up to date with the latest news by signing up for email alerts on the Living in Germany guide on gov.uk and continue to follow our Brits in Germany social media channels. And on your seats and on the tables in the back, many of you will already have seen the info cards which have the relevant links, and please feel free to take one. We will continue to share with you what we know, when we know it, and to provide you with as much clarity as we can. And now I'd like to pass the word to Christoph Wolfrum from the Auswärtiges Amt. Thank you very much.
Ambassador Wood, dear Ms. Golding, dear Mrs. Merz, dear Mr. Mazanke, and ladies and gentlemen. I thank you very much, Ambassador, for this invitation. It's always great to be here in the embassy. But in particular, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all today, because from the very beginning of the withdrawal process of the UK from the EU, the concerns of UK citizens in Germany and German citizens in the UK were at the center of our attention. We met Jane Golding and Maaike Bohn, her counterpart at 3 million in the UK, many times throughout the process at the Foreign Office, to hear their views and concerns and take them into account. And your cause continues to be a priority for our government. In the federal government, the Foreign Office has the steering role for our part in the Brexit process. But all other line ministries are deeply involved when it comes to their area of competence, So while I am here tonight, my colleagues, especially from the Ministry of the Interior or the Ministry of Labour and Social Affairs, stand ready to answer any questions you may have in the days to come. So, how do we prepare for the withdrawal? The federal government has set up task forces in each ministry. All task forces meet regularly, and together we prepare all Brexit-related decisions at cabinet level, for the cabinet level. Like all 27 EU member states, we prepare for all scenarios. Obviously, we believe in the negotiated deal as the best possible outcome of the withdrawal process, and this is particularly true for the citizens' rights. Still, uncertainties in the way ahead require prudent planning for any other outcome, and especially for the worst case, which in our view would be a no-deal scenario. So today I would like to focus on two scenarios. First, let's assume the withdrawal agreement comes into force. How are we planning to put it into German law and practice? We are fully convinced that the withdrawal agreement would be the best solution for all sides. Much has been achieved in the negotiations. Citizens' rights are being protected in order to respect their life choices, and this is for their lifetime. An agreement has been reached on the conditions for acquiring permanent residence and family reunification. The agreement establishes the coordination of social security systems and the administrative procedures for determining entitlements. And the agreement contains clear provisions on the recognition of professional qualifications. And Ambassador Wood has explained in much more detail different provisions of the withdrawal agreement. I am convinced that for the citizens, the achieved deal is a very good result of a very intense negotiation. And during the transition period, nothing will change. Free movement of people will continue. In addition, we in Germany have tabled a law in favor of British and German nationals who apply for naturalization before the end of the transition period. They will be allowed to retain British or German citizenship, even if the naturalization decision is taken after the end of the transition period. In such cases, dual citizenship will be accepted as an exception to the general rule under German law. So, what do you have to do to benefit from the rights conferred in the withdrawal agreement? We plan to introduce an application system for all British citizens falling under the scope of the withdrawal agreement. That means that every person will have to make an application to get his or her status recognized. This will give you legal certainty. You can rely on the decision. Even when entering Germany many years later, you will be able to prove your rights under the withdrawal agreement. Second, let's assume we end with a no deal, a scenario we all want to avoid. What does it mean for UK citizens in Germany? Let me focus on four aspects: the right of residence, access to the labour market, coordination of social security, and the question of citizenship. First, right of residence. Many will wonder, do we have to leave the country? A clear no. We want you to be able to continue living and working in Germany. For the case of a no deal, the Federal Ministry of the Interior is planning for a ministerial ordinance. It would exempt British nationals in Germany from the necessity of a residence permit for an initial 3 months and gives you the opportunity to submit an application for a residence permit without having to leave the country. For that application then, third country rules apply. That is the consequence of Brexit. Furthermore, the EU is planning to grant visa-free travel for short stays of up to 90 days in any 180-day period in the Schengen area. If, and this is the caveat, if the British side is willing to offer full reciprocity for all EU 27 member states. Second, the access to labour market is covered by the before-mentioned ministerial ordinance. Third, on the 12th December of 2018, the Federal Ministry of Labour and Social Affairs published a draft law on the transitional regulations in the areas of labor, education, health, social affairs, and citizenship. We recognize that people require legal certainty in the short term about their social security status. That concerns their insurance status, claims and benefits in the areas of statutory health and social long-term care insurance, statutory accident insurance, statutory pension insurance, and unemployment insurance. It is important to the federal government that citizens do not lose their insurance status solely as a result of the withdrawal of the UK from the EU. Fourth, this law also contains a section on naturalization applications corresponding to the before-mentioned provision in the Brexit transitional law. In case of a no deal, British and German nationals applying for naturalization before the exit date may retain their British or German citizenship even if the decision on their naturalization is taken after the exit date. I am convinced that all these measures, and there will be some more implementing decisions to be taken, will help mitigate the effects of a no-deal Brexit. Having said that, we can't deny that a no-deal Brexit will have consequences, not only for our economies, but also for the European citizens living in the UK and the British citizens living here. That's why our full energy goes into the deal on the table. And now, I'm looking forward to taking your questions later on. Thank you very much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the invitation from Priska and from the ambassador to appear tonight and speak on behalf of British citizens in Germany. And thank you very much to Christoph Wolfrum for his words of reassurance in both the case of a deal and a no deal here in Germany. But I have to say that we are in a very difficult situation at the moment. And British in Europe, which works very, very closely with the EU Citizens Group in the UK, the 3 million, put out a statement with the 3 million last week to urge both sides to take citizens out of the negotiations. We have warned both sides in the negotiations from the beginning, since 2017, of the risk of a no deal and the impact of the principle, nothing is agreed until everything is agreed on citizens' rights. And we also asked in our statement for solid proof that we really were a priority in these negotiations. People aren't car parts, they aren't airline slots, and they should have been taken out of the negotiations right from the start, particularly since we're in this situation now where it's nearly Christmas and we have no confirmed deal yet. A deal should have been reached. It was reached, a political agreement last Christmas. That deal should have been ring-fenced or safeguarded in some way so that citizens had certainty already, whatever happened on Brexit. That's not to say we don't appreciate all the work that's been done by the negotiators, but we did feel very strongly from the beginning that citizens should not have been part of the rest of the negotiations because we are people. So we're looking on with horror at the chaos that's going on in the UK Parliament at the moment, and as this reaches a new low every week and the constitutional crisis in the UK deepens. As one Politico commentator, media commentator, put it today, how would Sherlock Holmes have solved the Brexit crisis? No one wants the deal on offer, there are no alternatives, and almost no one wants no deal. I'm talking about the UK Parliament there. That would leave no Brexit as the logical solution, according to the commentator. But in fact, the solution being sought at the moment is to run down time and warn of no deal or no Brexit to get the deal through. This means that over 900 days have passed and still we have no certainty. And in fact, there's less than there was because of the situation at the moment. But I will go through the two different possibilities, deal or no deal. There is a deal on the table that hasn't changed materially since March. It might never be ratified. Hopefully it will, because it's better than a no deal, that's for sure. The ambassador has gone through and so has Christoph Wolfrum gone through what will be dealt with under that deal, but there are a number of holes in it, of course. And this ambassador talked about free movement or onward movement as one of them, rights to have professional qualifications recognised throughout the EU 27, another, rights to provide cross-border services. The family reunification rights would also be reduced compared to our EU citizenship rights. And at the moment, there's still no clarity as to how we will secure our rights across the whole EU 27, although I welcome the fact that Christoph Wolfrum has given us an indication now of the decision that Germany has taken on that matter. Then there's also the issue of rights of returning citizens, UK citizens, if they wish to return to the UK, and those haven't really been dealt with in the deal. Plus, of course, most of us still don't have a vote in the UK. Over 60% of us couldn't vote in the referendum, despite a manifesto promised 3 years ago from the Conservative Party that still hasn't been implemented. And, of course, we will lose all our political rights at local and European level, whether or not there is a deal. So those are the issues with a deal, but I must say it's better than a no deal, that's for sure. So as for the no deal scenario, the current chaos is taking us further away from the ratification of that deal. If we crash out on the 29th of March 2019, the consequences are dire for British citizens in the EU, because unless the EU 27 put legislation in place in every country, we will have no clear legal status on the 30th of March. So again, I welcome what Christoph Wolfrum has said about the plans in the case of a no deal here in Germany, because it's good to already get some sort of certainty there. But of course, that's in just over 3 months, and other countries haven't really dealt with these issues yet. Then there was an EC paper that was put out on the 13th of November, and I'm afraid we felt, in British in Europe, that it was really quite inadequate as far as protecting the rights of British citizens across the EU 27. It really was a skeleton proposal and doesn't simply, I think, pushes back the responsibility to the EU 27 and national law, other than for people who've got at least 5 years residence, in which case there could be some help at EU level. The position in the UK is a little bit different for EU citizens, because the Withdrawal Act that's already been adopted, in fact, will provide that they keep their current rights until they're removed. In our case, it would be rather that our rights would fall away until there is some legislation put in place to ensure that we will have a status. However, it's not all doom and gloom, because tomorrow there is a glimmer of hope, because the EC is tomorrow putting out legal proposals to deal with the case of a no deal in a number of sensitive areas. And the first on the list, according to media commentators, is British citizens in the EU. And media has also suggested that it's possible that there may be a transition phase of 6 to 9 months during which the rules will not change. So that would be like a transition phase in the case of a no deal. However, we have to wait until tomorrow to see what the EC actually proposes. I'll say something about the UK proposal in the case of a no deal. That came out on the 6th of December. It's an offer to EU citizens, so it at least gives some clarity on what their position would be, although it's not exactly the same as what was offered in the withdrawal agreement. For British in Europe, I felt that it was not really adequate, because it simply is calling upon EU 27 and giving the responsibility to EU 27 to secure our status. And there's a number of areas which the ambassador has already talked about, which are within the unilateral gift of the UK. Uprating pensions, for example, the ambassador mentioned that uprating pensions would continue. However, if you read the small print of that paper, there is a footnote that says that this is subject to reciprocity. So this is something that we are trying to get a confirmation on. Then there's also the wording on returning citizens to the UK, whether or not we can take our family members back to the UK without having to go under having to deal with harsh UK immigration rules. The wording in the paper, again, is very vague. And this is something that concerns people, and people are really seriously worried about. If you had to go back and look after an elderly relative and could not take your non-British spouse with you unless you fell within those harsher UK immigration rules. Then also in the paper, we felt that the points on aggregation of pensions were not very good at all, and that requires further work, we think. We also feel that it would have helped if the UK offer had to EU citizens in the UK had entirely replicated what the UK had signed up to under the withdrawal agreement. Instead, it does fall short in some key ways, including on family reunification. And the feeling is, certainly among our members, is that at certain key stages during the process, at the beginning, in its response to the EU's initial proposal last year, and now, there were opportunities for the UK to generate goodwill as far as citizens' rights are concerned. And we feel that those opportunities were squandered. And none of this gives us solid proof that we really are a priority for the UK in the negotiations. Plus, the rumours about the future immigration policy and the immigration white paper in the UK doesn't help. It's expected to come out tomorrow, which at least is positive because that would put an end to the rumours and then we would know exactly what the situation is, although I've heard rumours today again that it may not appear. Turning to Germany, I'm very glad, as I said already, that we've got some indications of what the position is going to be in Germany, and I'm glad to say that Germany has, unlike some EU countries, already taken some preparatory legislative steps, and Christoph Wolfrum talked about those already. So I won't go into them any further. And it's good because one of the questions I had to raise this evening was that we need more information on how we secure our status, which Christoph Wolfrum has given us. Not the detail yet, but at least what the decision is going to be, and also more information on the detail of the preparations for a no deal, and it's very welcome to have that. So I can only end by saying, as I say, there's a glimmer of hope tomorrow. I would be very happy, and I think it would be very positive if we did see a transition phase being proposed tomorrow by the EC. So I hope that the EU is going to go high, not low tomorrow, and make proposals that will give UK citizens in the EU a breathing space and some sort of Christmas present. Thank you.
Ja, meine sehr geehrten Damen und Herren, sehr geehrter Herr Botschafter, Eure Exzellenz, ich bitte als erstes um Entschuldigung, dass ich Deutsch zu Ihnen spreche, aber aus meiner Sicht möchte ich sehr konkret werden und je konkreter ich werde, desto mehr befürchte ich, würde ich Fehler machen, wenn ich versuche, jetzt hier Englisch zu sprechen. Aber ich habe einen Herrn zu meiner Seite, der das jetzt für Sie übersetzen wird, so Sie nicht ohnehin alle gut Deutsch sprechen.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name, I should introduce myself first of all as Engelhard Mazanke, the head of the Foreign Nationals Office, the Ausländerbehörde here in Berlin. I'd like to apologize for the fact that I'm going to speak in German to you, although I assume that many of you will understand me anyway, but as you can now see, I have an interpreter on hand just in case, and the reason for that is because I want to be very precise and very specific now, and it'll be easier for me to do that in German.
Als ich zugesagt habe, habe ich mich sehr gefreut, weil ich davon ausgegangen bin, dass ich Ihnen heute sehr detailliert präsentieren kann, was die Rechte für Briten in unserer Stadt Berlin sein werden ab dem 30. März. Ich habe mich nicht so gefreut, als ich die Prozesse der letzten Woche beobachtet habe, weil sehr detailliert ist es jetzt noch nicht.
So when I said that I was going to come talk to you today, I was very pleased because I expected that it would be quite clear what the rights of British citizens in Germany would be from the 30th of March. And so I actually became rather concerned in the last few weeks when it became apparent that that's not the case yet.
Deshalb kann ich Ihnen vorausschicken, erstmal 3 Sachen sagen, was ich Ihnen nicht sagen kann heute.
I think you all got that, but for those of you who didn't, so the first thing I'm going to say today are the 3 things that I won't be able to tell you in this talk.
Ich kann Ihnen noch nicht im Detail sagen, welche Aufenthaltstitel Sie von der Ausländerbehörde Berlin wann bekommen werden. Ich kann Ihnen noch nicht sagen, welche Erteilungsvoraussetzungen das beinhaltet und welche Unterlagen meine Mitarbeiterinnen und Mitarbeiter dann von Ihnen brauchen. Und ich kann Ihnen auch noch nicht sagen, wie sich andere Ausländerbehörden und auch andere Bundesländer auf diese Situation vorbereiten. Ich kann Ihnen also wirklich nur eine Aussage für die Stadt Berlin geben.
So of course I'm only speaking here on behalf of the city of Berlin first of all, and the first thing I cannot tell you is which future residence title you will be entitled to. I won't be able to tell you what the preconditions, the provisos for those titles will be. And I'm afraid I also won't be able to tell you what the situation will be in other foreign nationals offices around Germany.
Aber die gute Nachricht ist, ich kann Ihnen 2 Dinge versprechen. Das eine, was ich Ihnen versprechen werde, die Ausländerbehörde Berlin und die gesamte Verwaltung Berlins wird alles tun, damit Sie möglichst schnell Klarheit bekommen über Ihren Aufenthaltsstatus in der Stadt. Und wir werden die gesetzlichen Möglichkeiten, die der Bund uns vorgibt, so ausschöpfen, dass wir mit Sicherheit, das ist mein persönliches Ziel, die großzügigste Anwendung aller Bundesländer hier in Berlin haben werden.
There are 2 things that I can promise you. And the first of those is that I can give you the assurance that for the city of Berlin, I personally and my colleagues in the Foreign Nationals Office will exploit to the full whatever legislative arrangements are put in place at the federal level with regard to British nationals in this country.
Und das zweite Versprechen ist, wir werden alles tun, dass Sie möglichst bald eine Bescheinigung in Händen halten, wenn Sie das denn wünschen, mit der Sie gegenüber anderen Stellen, aber auch gegen privaten Partnern, gegenüber Banken, Krankenversicherungen, Jobcentern nachweisen können, dass Sie einen britischen Staatsangehörige sind, die sich hier längerfristig aufgehalten hat und deshalb gewisse Rechte beanspruchen kann.
And the second thing that I can give you a complete assurance on is that if you should so wish it, I and my colleagues at the authority will issue you with a certificate which demonstrates, which proves, illustrates that you are a British citizen, for example, who has been here as a long-term resident, and that you will be able to use this certificate when engaging other units, other authorities, other organizations, for example, health insurance or banks. That's something we'll be able to provide for you very, very quickly.
Vorweg ein paar Zahlen. Wir gehen derzeit nach unseren Zahlen davon aus, dass in Berlin zum Zeitpunkt 29. März 2019 18.000 britische Menschen leben werden, die sich dauerhaft in dieser Stadt aufhalten. Also nicht nur besuchsweise, sondern hier eine Wohnung haben, einem Studium nachgehen, Familienangehörige haben oder arbeiten. 18.000 Menschen.
So just to start with a few figures, on the understanding of our statistics, we're working on the basis that as of the 29th of March next year, we're talking about around 18,000 British citizens residing, not just on temporary visits, but actually permanently residing in this city.
Das entspricht ungefähr jedem 7. Briten, der sich in Deutschland aufhält. Also jeder 7. Brite lebt nach unserer Schätzung in Berlin.
That's about 1 in 7 of Brits across the whole of this country, so 1/7 of the British population in Germany lives in this city.
Um diese 18.000 Menschen beraten, bedienen und mit einer Aufenthaltserlaubnis versehen zu können, müsste ich die Ausländerbehörde Berlin ungefähr 8 Wochen für alle anderen Kunden und alle anderen Aufgaben schließen.
just to give you a sense of what processing these 18,000 Britons in this city would mean for my authority, I would actually have to deploy the entirety of my staff for a total of 8 weeks just to process all of you.
Sie können sich vorstellen, dass das nicht geht.
Imagine that would be quite tricky, or in fact impossible.
Ich habe Stand heute, obwohl wir uns sehr darum bemüht haben, auch der Senat von Berlin, keinen zusätzlichen Mitarbeiter für diese Aufgabe bekommen. Ich habe kein zusätzliches Büro und ich habe auch keinen zusätzlichen Computer.
And as you can imagine, in this situation, I've been pushing my seniors to give me more staff, more people, but I'm afraid that as of today, I haven't been given even a single computer in addition to what I have at the moment already, or the office space, and not to mention staff.
Aber was ich tatsächlich habe, ich habe sehr gute, flexible Mitarbeiter, eine sehr lebendige Organisation und ich habe Erfahrung mit Krisen. Wir haben nämlich hier in Berlin in der Flüchtlingskrise 2015-16 schon mal schnell und ich glaube auch in der Ausländerbehörde Berlin ganz gut mit Kundenströmen gearbeitet.
But what I do have is an excellent team, a first-rate authority, which is very flexible and also very adept at responding to crises, as I think we demonstrated a few years ago with the refugee crisis. So that's on the positive side.
Und deshalb haben wir folgenden Plan.
Here comes the plan.
Wir möchten voraussichtlich ab 2. Januar oder zumindest in der ersten Januarwoche auf unserer Homepage eine Information schalten, die Sie alle nutzen können, und zwar an 7 Tagen die Woche rund um die Uhr.
Please look out on the website of the Foreign Nationals Office, the Ausländerbehörde, from the 2nd of January or certainly by the end of the first week of January for special information that we're going to be providing for Brits in Berlin.
Diese Informationen werden wir dank der Zusammenarbeit mit der britischen Botschaft auf Englisch anbieten.
We're going to put this information into English thanks to the cooperation with the British Embassy.
Und Sie haben die Möglichkeit, auf dieser Seite Ihre Personendaten, Ihre Adresse zu hinterlassen und wir werden Sie dann bitten, gewisse Informationen zu Ihrem bisherigen Aufenthalt, Ihrer familiären und beruflichen Situation zu geben.
And you'll have the possibility then to go onto our website and to register to provide personal information about yourself, about your status, about your family members, about whether you study here or work.
Wir wünschen uns einen Eintrag pro Familie und wir werden dort Sie bitten, tatsächlich diese Dinge möglichst vollständig anzugeben.
We're only looking for one entry per family, and what we would request is that when you go and register on this website, that you provide as complete a set of information as possible.
Und Sie kennen das alle von anderen Homepages. In dem Moment, wo Sie diese Angaben vollständig machen, Unterlagen brauchen wir noch nicht, und diese Informationsseite dann schließen, werden Sie automatisch per E-Mail von uns eine Bescheinigung erhalten auf Deutsch.
And you know how it works with things like this. What we're not looking for at the moment is documentation. This is just a website where you'll be registering. And as soon as you close this website, having registered, you know what happens. You then get an email. It will be in German, landing in your inbox.
Und diese Bescheinigung wird in Verbindung mit einem gültigen britischen Pass dafür sorgen, das ist so unsere Vorstellung, dass zumindest im gesamten Land Berlin Sie damit dokumentieren können, dass Sie ein Brite sind, der zum 29.03. in Berlin gewohnt hat, weiterhin hier das Aufenthaltsrecht hat, zu leben und arbeiten zu können. Sie müssen dann also nur dieses Dokument bei sich führen und Ihren britischen Pass.
And this is important. The content of this email that you'll be receiving is actually a certificate which, in conjunction with a British passport, will demonstrate, you'll be able to present it to all authorities and offices across the state of Berlin, the city of Berlin, that this entitles you to residence beyond the 29th of March next year.
Und nach geltendem Recht, schon jetzt geltendem Recht in Deutschland ist es so, unabhängig davon, ob es ein No-Deal-Szenario gibt oder ein Abkommen, haben Sie dann das Recht, hier zu arbeiten und sich hier aufzuhalten und alle sozialen und sonstigen Rechte wie vorher in Anspruch zu nehmen, bis die Ausländerbehörde über diesen elektronischen Antrag entschieden hat.
And it's already valid, it's already current law in Germany, regardless of whether we have a no-deal scenario or whether there is an agreement. It's already valid law that once you've registered in that situation, you then have valid residency here in Germany until the point where the Foreign Nationals Office has actually taken a decision on your status.
Und unser Plan ist, dass wir Sie dann alle einladen, hoffentlich bis Ende 2019, um Sie dann individuell zu beraten, Ihre Unterlagen zu prüfen und Ihnen danach endgültig die Aufenthaltserlaubnis oder sonstige Bescheinigung zu geben, die Sie dann beanspruchen können, je nachdem, welcher rechtliche Rahmen bis dahin noch gesteckt wird.
And the plan that we have on the basis of that is that we'll then issue personal invitations to all of you throughout 2019 by the end of the year, coming year, in which we'll be able to discuss your individual circumstances, your situation with you, and then issue on the basis of your entitlements the requisite residency title.
Wir verbinden das dann allerdings auch mit einer Bitte und die Bitte wird sein, haben Sie Verständnis, dass wir nicht in der Lage sein werden, solche Bescheinigungen persönlich bei Vorsprache auszustellen und dass wir Ihnen auch keine Termine anbieten werden können, voraussichtlich telefonisch, weil wir dafür kein Personal haben. Aber verlassen Sie sich bitte darauf, dass wir alles tun werden, um Sie dann in die richtige, juristisch gesprochen, Aufenthaltserlaubnis zu heben.
So the flip side of what I've just said to you is actually a request that what you don't do is then bombard me and my colleagues in the office with inquiries, because this is the arrangement that we're going to be putting in place, and what that would mean is that we'll be approaching you. So I think if you were to be approaching us as well, then we wouldn't have the staff to be actually dealing with those inquiries. But if you can just trust us that we'll be working through on the basis of your registrations, the applications that you're then submitting, and then to put it in legal language, we'll be providing you with the requisite residency title that you're looking for.
Insofern kann ich Ihnen heute leider kein Weihnachtsgeschenk mitbringen, aber wie meine Vorredner freue ich mich jetzt auf Ihre Fragen und ich denke, wir können im Detail das ein oder andere jetzt nochmal klären. Vielen Dank.
So, I think you all got that, but just in case, as with my other speakers, I can't give you a Christmas present now, but certainly I look forward to the discussion with the rest of you now and hopefully some more answers.